In a small suburban house, nestled along quiet streets lined with trees and red-tiled roofs, Emma lived with her husband, Jack. They had been married for over 10 years. And like many long-term couples, their lives had fallen into a monotonous routine. The romantic excitement of their early years had faded into short conversations, silent dinners, and an invisible yet growing distance between them. Jack was a hard-working man, often engrossed in his job or hobbies like fishing or tinkering in the garage. He would come home late or, when home, spend most of his time in his workspace or watching football on TV. For Jack, this was his way of unwinding. But for Emma, his lack of attention made her feel like a shadow in her own home. As the days went by, she sank deeper into a sense of loneliness, wondering if Jack even saw her as a companion anymore or just a familiar fixture in their house. Each morning, Emma followed the same routine. She brewed coffee, cleaned the house, then spent time reading or gardening. In the afternoons, she would go for walks around the neighborhood, watching other couples laugh, talk, or play with their kids and pets. Instead of bringing her joy, these scenes only deepened the emptiness she felt. She longed for something new, some small change to break the monotony. But she didn't know where to begin. One afternoon, as the sun began to dip behind the trees, Emma decided to go for a jog along a small road that led to the nearby fields. The cool air and faint scent of wildflowers offered her a brief sense of relief. As she jogged, Emma suddenly stopped, spotting a small shape lying by the roadside. Moving closer, she realized it was a dog, thin, dirty, and clearly exhausted. Its matted fur clung to its frail body, and its eyes looked up at her with a mix of fear and weariness. The dog curled up as she approached, too weak to flee. Emma knelt down, keeping her distance to avoid scaring the dog further. She spoke softly, her voice gentle and soothing. "It's okay, little one," she whispered. "I won't hurt you." After a while, seeing that the dog didn't react aggressively, Emma slowly reached out her hand. The dog glanced at her cautiously, as if trying to assess whether she was a threat. Emma's patience paid off, and the dog eventually crawled closer. Hesitantly but hopefully. Looking at the fragile creature in such a dire state, Emma felt a surge of emotion. It had been so long since she had felt truly needed, truly essential to someone or something. Carefully, she lifted the dog into her arms, feeling its trembling body against hers. "Let's go home," she said, her voice firm yet tender. She couldn't leave the little creature behind, especially when it so clearly needed help. Back home, Emma placed the dog on a soft towel in the living room. The dog curled up, still wary but visibly relieved. Emma quickly prepared a bowl of water and some food. She set it down and stepped back, giving the dog space to feel safe. At first, it hesitated, but soon it cautiously moved forward and began eating. Its movements slow and deliberate. Watching the dog eat, Emma felt a warmth spread through her chest. She couldn't remember the last time she felt this sense of purpose. This small, fragile dog, though weak and scared, had brought something back into her life, a sense of being needed, of caring, and above all, a spark of life in the dull routine that had consumed her. When Jack came home that evening, he was surprised to see Emma sitting with the dog. "What's this?" he asked, his tone a mix of curiosity and mild irritation. Emma looked up, and for the first time in a long while, She felt a flicker of confidence. I found it on the road. It needed help, she said. Her voice calm but firm. Jack stared at her for a moment before shrugging. If you want to keep it. That's up to you. Just don't expect me to get involved, he said. Disappearing into his study. While Jack's response wasn't what Emma had hoped for. She didn't feel disheartened. She turned back to the dog. Gently stroking its scruffy fur. And whispered. Don't worry. We have each other now. That night. As Emma lay in bed. The sound of the dog's steady breathing from the corner of the room brought a smile to her face. She knew that. Though small. The arrival of this little creature had brought a new light into her life, a spark of hope in the darkness of monotony. After that fateful afternoon when Emma found the small, abandoned dog by the roadside, she decided to bring it home. She named it Luna. A name she thought symbolized gentleness and light. Something her otherwise dreary life desperately needed. At first, when Luna stepped into the house, Jack just stood there, watching with a mix of indifference and mild irritation. Do you really want to keep it? Jack asked. His tone tinged with reluctance. Emma, with an unusual firmness in her gaze, nodded. Yes. It needs me, she replied, feeling a newfound strength in her voice. While Jack wasn't thrilled with the idea of having a dog in the house, he didn't outright oppose it. Perhaps he thought. Like most things, Emma's excitement over Luna would fade soon enough. But Emma knew Luna was more than just a passing fancy. From the moment she saw the dog's frightened, wide eyes, she felt a special connection. A mutual need that neither of them could ignore. Luna, despite its initial exhaustion and wariness, quickly proved to be an intelligent and affectionate dog. On its first day in the house, Luna followed Emma everywhere. When Emma was in the kitchen, Luna sat quietly by the door, watching her every move. When Emma sat on the sofa to read, Luna curled up at her feet. Its ears perked up as if listening intently to Emma's thoughts. This attention and care, though coming from a dog, surprised and moved Emma deeply. How long had it been since she felt seen, valued, and appreciated? That feeling, which had long faded in her marriage to Jack, was now rekindled by a small creature with loving eyes. Luna's presence brought subtle but meaningful changes to Emma's life. Each morning, when Emma woke up, Luna would be waiting by her bed, its tail wagging gently as if greeting her for the new day. When Emma returned from her runs or trips to the store, Luna was the first to race to the door, jumping with joy as though her return was the most wonderful event it had ever witnessed. These small gestures, insignificant as they might seem, gave Emma immense comfort. They reminded her that she was still valuable, still capable of being the center of someone's world, even if that someone was just a small dog. Gradually, Emma realized that Luna wasn't just a dog but a companion. A friend she hadn't known she'd been missing all these years. When she read in the afternoons, Luna would lie beside her, its small head resting on her lap, its steady breathing creating an indescribable sense of peace. When she gardened, Luna would run around playfully, chasing fallen leaves but always returning to check that Emma was still there. Luna's presence made her feel less alone, and the loneliness that had once consumed her began to fade. Jack, though indifferent to Luna at first, started to notice the changes in Emma. He saw her smile more often, her eyes lighting up whenever she played with Luna. One evening, as Emma sat on the rug petting Luna's soft fur, Jack paused in the hallway and watched them. "You really love that dog, don't you?" he said. His tone softer than usual. Emma looked up and smiled. She makes me feel alive again, she said. Her voice tinged with hesitation but filled with sincerity. Jack said nothing more. But he lingered for a moment before walking away. In his eyes, there seemed to be a flicker of realization about the woman he had neglected for so long. Luna, with her intelligence and warmth, didn't just bring joy to Emma but also slowly changed the atmosphere in the house. The silent dinners now had moments of laughter as Emma giggled at Luna trying to paw at her for food. The once tense mornings were now filled with the sound of Luna's little paws scurrying around the kitchen, following Emma's every step. To Emma, Luna wasn't just a dog, she was a tiny ray of light brightening the dark corners of her life. One day, as Emma sat on the couch reading her favorite book, Luna lying beside her as always, she paused and stroked Luna's fur. "Thank you for coming into my life, Luna," she said softly, as if speaking to herself. "I don't know what I'd do without you." Luna didn't understand the words, but her eyes met Emma's with pure love and loyalty, as if to say, "I'm glad I found you too." Though the changes were small, Luna's presence gave Emma a renewed sense of purpose, a reason to smile and feel valued. Deep down, Emma knew that Luna wasn't just a stray dog who happened to appear but a friend, a savior, and above all, a beacon of hope guiding her out of the monotony and emptiness of her life. One afternoon, as the sun faded behind the trees, its golden light bathed the living room where Emma sat alone on the sofa. The book in her hands was halfway read, but her eyes no longer followed the words on the page. Instead, she stared out the window, watching leaves scatter in the soft breeze. Inside her, a strange weariness swelled, not physical exhaustion but a heavy burden that had built up over years of unspoken emotions. Jack, as usual, wasn't home. He was likely in his workshop or out fishing with friends. Evenings like these often left Emma submerged in loneliness. She couldn't remember the last time Jack had truly sat down with her, asked her how she felt, or simply listened to her. In her mind, a question echoed relentlessly: how did our marriage end up like this? Tears began to stream down her face, one by one, sliding silently down her cheeks. She tried to hold them back, but her emotions burst forth. The feeling of being forgotten, the pressure of monotonous days, and the longing for a time when she felt loved all came together into a deep sadness. Emma bowed her head, her hands clenched tightly as if hoping to weather this storm of emotions. Suddenly, she felt a gentle touch on her knee. Looking up, Emma saw Luna standing before her, her large, round eyes filled with concern. Luna didn't bark or make a sound, she simply stood there, silent but present. Then, Luna rested her head on Emma's lap, as if to say, "You're not alone. I'm here." In that moment, a wave of comfort washed over Emma. Luna began softly licking her hand, as if to wipe away her tears. Emma placed her hand on Luna's head, stroking her soft fur. "Thank you, Luna," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Thank you for always being here." The strange thing was, even though Luna couldn't speak, her presence brought Emma a sense of being heard that Jack hadn't provided in years. Luna's small but genuine gestures, her attentive eyes, her gentle touch, and her quiet patience, made Emma realize something important. What she truly needed wasn't grand gestures or flowery words. She needed attention, care, and the feeling of being present in someone's world. In the days that followed, Emma began observing Luna more closely. She noticed that Luna wasn't just always near her but also attuned to her every emotion. When Emma smiled, Luna would wag her tail with excitement. When Emma sighed, Luna would sit quietly by her side. Her eyes filled with empathy. This made Emma painfully aware of a truth she had long buried, in the past 10 years. She had never received such attention and care from Jack. Emma didn't blame Jack for the distance in their marriage. She knew he wasn't a bad person. And perhaps the gap between them had grown from both sides. But Luna made her see what she truly needed, more than just physical presence. She needed someone to be there emotionally, someone who would listen and genuinely be part of her life. One evening, as Emma lay in bed, Luna curled up at her feet as always. She stared at the ceiling, reflecting on her life and the voids Luna had quietly filled. Luna wasn't a solution to all her problems. But she had given Emma something invaluable, the feeling of being loved and a newfound appreciation for the little things. What Jack hadn't done, Luna had managed to do, not because Luna was extraordinary but because she truly saw Emma, listened to her, and stayed with her during her loneliest moments. These thoughts left Emma conflicted. Could she continue living in a marriage where the connection between them had faded to the point of being nearly non-existent? Luna, with her unwavering loyalty and unconditional love, had become a companion who showed Emma what she had been missing all these years, and what she deserved. Before drifting off to sleep, Emma leaned down to stroke Luna. A silent thank you for everything the little dog had done. In her mind, a clear thought began to form: she couldn't keep living in silence and uncertainty. Luna had taught her that she deserved to feel loved, to have a life where she was valued. And with that realization, a small spark of hope ignited within her, a hope that perhaps it was time to act, to rediscover the joy and connection she had lost. One evening, after cleaning up dinner and with Luna curled up in the corner of the living room, Emma knew she couldn't delay any longer. She had been thinking about this conversation for days. And now she was determined to face Jack, who was sitting on the sofa engrossed in a football match. The room was quiet, the ticking of the wall clock filling the space. Emma took a deep breath, gathering the courage she had lacked for years. "Jack," she called, her voice calm but firm. Jack glanced at her over the TV screen, clearly surprised by her serious tone. "We need to talk," Emma continued, standing tall, her hands clasped tightly to steady herself. Jack placed the remote down, raising an eyebrow. "What's this about? You sound serious." Emma sat in the chair opposite him, her eyes locking with his. "I need you to listen to me." Without interrupting, she said. And before Jack could respond, she added, "Please, Jack. This is important to me." Jack nodded silently, leaning back slightly with his arms crossed. Though he seemed uncomfortable, he decided to hear her out. Emma began by sharing the feelings she had been harboring for years. She talked about the loneliness she felt in their marriage, about how she often felt invisible in his life. Her voice wavered as she said, "Do you even know when the last time you really asked me how I was feeling was?" Jack looked at her, his eyes flickering with a mix of surprise and discomfort. Before he could say anything, Emma pressed on. "I'm not saying this to blame you, Jack. I just need you to understand that. For so long, I've felt like I didn't exist to you. And then Luna came into my life." Jack frowned slightly at the mention of the dog but stayed silent. Emma explained, her voice softening. "Luna can't talk. She can't do much except be here. But the strange thing is, just by sitting next to me, looking at me, Or resting her head on my lap. She makes me feel cared for. Luna does these little things that make me feel like I matter. Like I'm not alone. Jack, she looked directly at him. What I need isn't grand gestures or expensive gifts. I just need to know you care. To know you pay attention to my feelings and thoughts. Like Luna has. Jack sat in silence. His expression shifting to one of mild defensiveness. Are you seriously comparing me to a dog? He asked. His tone tinged with irritation. But Emma shook her head. Her voice steady. No. Jack. I'm not asking you to be Luna. I'm just trying to explain how I feel. These small gestures. This attention. And presence, those are the things I feel are missing. Jack took a deep breath. Visibly uncomfortable. I didn't know you felt this way. I thought everything was fine. I've been working hard to provide for us. To give us a good life, he said. His eyes avoiding hers. I know you work hard. Jack. And I appreciate that. Emma replied. But a good life isn't just about financial stability or a nice house. It's about connection. About truly being there for each other. You can be in the same room with me. And yet I still feel alone. Her words hit Jack like a punch to the gut. He sat quietly for a long moment. His hands falling to his sides. His gaze turning contemplative. I didn't realize, he said softly. His voice tinged with guilt. I didn't realize you felt this way. I thought I was doing things right. Emma smiled faintly. Though sadness lingered in her eyes. Sometimes we think we're doing the right thing. But we forget what really matters. At that moment, Luna padded over from her corner of the room. Her small tail wagging gently as she approached Emma and Jack. She hopped onto the sofa. Settling herself between them. Her curious eyes fixed on Jack. Emma stroked Luna gently and said. You know. Luna isn't just a dog. She's a reminder that small things, a touch. A look. A kind word, can mean so much. Jack looked at Luna. Then at Emma. He sighed. His hand reaching out to stroke Luna's head gently. I get it, he said. His voice low. I'm sorry. Emma. I've been so focused on everything else that I've forgotten about you. I don't want you to feel this way. I'll try. I promise I'll try. Emma's eyes brightened slightly. And for the first time in years. She felt a glimmer of hope. I don't need you to change overnight. Jack, she said. I just need you to listen to me and try. Because I know I need to try too. That night. As Emma went to bed. Jack stayed back on the sofa with Luna curled up in his lap. He looked at the little dog. A strange sense of gratitude welling up inside him. He realized that Luna had unintentionally become a bridge. Helping him see what he had been missing in his marriage. And though it was just a small start. Jack knew he didn't want to lose the chance to make things right. Since Emma and Jack's honest conversation. The atmosphere in their home had shifted. Though not perfect. The cold silence had gradually been replaced by small conversations. Shared moments. And a warmth that hadn't existed in years. Luna. With her quiet presence. Became the invisible bridge reconnecting two people who had once grown apart. One morning. As soft sunlight filtered through the curtains. Jack suggested something surprising. How about we take Luna for a walk together, he said. This was something he had never done before. As his weekends were usually spent working. Indulging in hobbies. Or watching TV. Emma. Momentarily taken aback. Smiled brightly and agreed. Together. The three of them stepped out of the house. leaving behind the monotony of the past. Luna trotted ahead, her tail wagging energetically as though leading the way. Jack walked slowly beside Emma, occasionally glancing at her as if to check if she was okay. They didn't talk much, but the silence no longer felt oppressive. Instead, it was comforting, a quiet companionship they hadn't shared in years. These walks became a regular habit. Jack began to realize that small things, like watching a sunset together or throwing a ball for Luna, could bring joy and a sense of connection he had once overlooked. Emma, for her part, felt happiness bloom as she saw Jack making a clear effort. These moments didn't just make her feel loved, they restored her belief that their marriage could be saved. One evening, while Emma was preparing dinner, Jack unexpectedly walked into the kitchen. Instead of sitting at the table or scrolling on his phone as usual, he opened a cabinet, pulled out a dish towel, and asked, "Do you need help with anything?" The simple question made Emma pause, surprise flickering across her face. But instead of replying immediately, she smiled and handed him a knife. "You can help me chop the vegetables," she said softly. They worked side by side in the kitchen, the silence between them no longer uncomfortable. Occasionally, they exchanged glances and small smiles. Luna lay on the floor, her ears perking up at the sound of the knife on the cutting board. But she remained still, as if sensing the harmony in the room. Over time, Jack became more attuned to the little things that mattered to Emma. He noticed she loved daisies, so occasionally, he would bring home a small bouquet to place on the dining table. He also made a conscious effort to ask her about her day and truly listen, without interrupting or rushing. These small gestures, though simple, meant the world to Emma. She didn't need grand displays of affection, she just needed to see Jack trying. And that was enough. Emma, too, realized that rebuilding their relationship required effort from both sides. She began to take an interest in Jack's passions, asking him about his projects and even joining him in activities she once found dull. One day, she agreed to go fishing with him, a hobby she had always dismissed as boring. But as she sat by the lake, watching Jack chat animatedly about small details, she realized that reconnecting was about sharing even the simplest moments together. Luna, ever the silent observer, was present in all these moments. When Emma and Jack talked, Luna lay at their feet, her ears perked as if listening. When they went for walks, Luna led the way but always turned back to make sure they were following. Luna wasn't just a rescue dog, she was their rescuer, reminding them that love and connection were built on presence and genuine care. One cold winter evening, as the wind howled outside, the family gathered in the living room. Jack and Emma lay on the couch, with Luna nestled between them, her small head resting on Emma's lap. On the television played a movie they had chosen together, not something one watched alone while the other felt ignored. Jack reached over and took Emma's hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. She turned to look at him, her eyes filled with peace. "Thank you," Jack said quietly. "Thank you for giving me the chance to start over." Emma didn't reply, only smiled and squeezed his hand in return. No words were needed because the moment spoke volumes. Luna, sensing their contentment, closed her eyes and exhaled softly, her breathing steady and calm. Their story didn't end there because life would continue, with its inevitable challenges and joys. But what mattered was that they had begun anew, not with grand gestures, but with small, meaningful steps. And whenever Emma looked at Luna, she remembered that this little dog hadn't just brought her a companion but had also taught her and Jack a valuable lesson: love doesn't lie in the big things but in the small, everyday moments. In presence. And in genuine care. As the living room lights dimmed, the final image was of Emma, Jack, and Luna curled up together on the couch. A family. Connected and full of love. Ready to face whatever came next, together.